Good morning, viewers, and welcome to the next episode of Dabolim Dialogues. I had thought we would dedicate this episode to Submarine Day, which is on the 8th of December. And for that, I thought it would be best to speak with none other than Admiral Vijai Singh Shekhawat. He was one of our founding members of the submarine arm, and from there rose on to become the 14th Chief of Naval Staff. More importantly, he was my deputy commandant when I was a young cadet in NDA, and was an extremely inspirational figure for all of us. In fact, all of us wanted to emulate him as we grew through our service. My association with him, in fact, runs a little deeper because his son, Ranveer Shekhawat, and I were shipmates on INS Kalvari. He was my XO, and an extremely fine officer with whom I really cherish the time we spent together. Now, I had done this recording with Admiral Shekhawat actually in two parts because we had taken a break in the middle. And the first part has unfortunately got corrupted. So the first part actually I started with his, what prompted him to join the submarine arm and how he went about, their early training which took place in the United Kingdom on the Oberon and various other Royal Navy classes of submarines. And the disappointment they had at that time when that program did not translate into an acquisition and they all had to come back to India. And thereafter, soon after that, the Soviet program for the Foxtrots came through and they all moved on to Vladivostok where they underwent their training and subsequently commissioned INS Kalvari on the 8th of December 1967. And a few months after that was INS Karanj, which Admiral Shekhawat, of which submarine Admiral Shekhawat was the XO. So this program actually starts with the commissioning of INS Kalvari. And I will try and search for another occasion to again cover what I covered in the first part. But it's quite a detailed program which traces the entire journey, the early journey that we had of acquisition of submarines, of rapidly operationalizing them, of the 1971 operations. So it's a really interesting story, and I'm truly grateful to Admiral Shekhawat for taking the time out. You might find the start a little abrupt because of what I mentioned, where we start straight with the commissioning of the first two boats, and thereafter the story rolls on. So viewers, my apologies once again, and welcome to Dabolim Dialogues. Also tell us about the commissioning. You were involved in the commissioning of the second submarine, sir, or the first submarine itself, sir?
Actually, both.
And it must have been a big event for us at that time. Can you tell us about how that was handled?
To complete the training part of it,
Yes.
as I mentioned, the Soviets believed in having a designated boat or a ship for training purposes. So our Petya crews were also similarly on a particular ship. The other ships would not be exposed to that rugged kind of operation. So initially we were quite disappointed in the training submarine compared to what we knew
After seeing the British.
of the Oberon class,
Yes,
which was the latest British submarine.
Yes.
There were a number of differences, though the essential features of a submarine have to be similar. However, when we actually went to commission our own submarine, it was a very pleasant surprise because it was brand new, of course. There were a number of improvements in it compared to the training submarine. The diesel engines were a totally different modern design, which actually we now had to relearn to some extent, which they had kept it as a complete surprise from us, and so on. So there were certain features which took some getting used to, which we pointed out as differences, and I think they were rectified in the Vela class to a considerable extent. As to the commissioning, the 8th of December had been selected. Now, December is a very bitter month in those parts of the world.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the uniforms that were issued to our sailors, especially the overcoats and so on, they were of quite inferior quality, the woolens.
Yes.
Mismatched trouser and tunic, shabby overcoat. So we did not feel up to wearing them for the commissioning, though the temperature that day was a pretty warm, -5 degrees Celsius. And so for an hour we stood in the, luckily there was no blizzard or snow that day. Now I was spare crew executive officer, so I was present in that capacity.
Right.
And so I didn't line up with the crew of the Kalvari, but I was there in the remaining week. I remained there for about a month after the commissioning. All the workup and all started. And then Naval Headquarters decided that I need not be present there.
Right.
So I was sent back to India. I took a month's leave. At the end of that month's leave, they decided that they needed me again.
So you went back again.
I was quite happy to have had a month's leave. But what had happened was that Roy Millen, who was the executive officer, he had fallen ill.
Okay.
And he had to be repatriated. So I was sent back as XO. So I actually did the rest of the storing of the ship and the completion of the workup.
This is all post-commissioning.
Post-commissioning.
Right.
So the storing of the ship for the passage and the preparation for the long round the Cape of Good Hope sail, because Suez Canal was closed.
So let me get this right, sir. You did your training in Vladivostok, but you commissioned in Riga.
We commissioned in Riga.
Okay, so so everyone had to shift across.
Yes. I don't know where the submarine was built actually. Whether it was built in Leningrad, St. Petersburg, possibly, because otherwise they would have commissioned on the East Coast.
Actually, they have another yard at Gorky, he used to have, sir, which was close to Moscow. Because I know Sindhuraj, the boat that I commissioned, was built in Gorky, which is, and then taken by barge and taken all the way out.
Yes. So they had a very efficient system of canals whereby they could transport cruiser-level vessels all the way from the North Sea to the Black Sea.
Yes.
So anyway, howsoever that might be. So we commissioned in December, but by the time we completed all our workups and tasks, as they call them, it was April. And the Baltic Sea was still frozen then, in April. And being the first submarine, Naval Headquarters had sent out Talwar
to escort
us back. I was very happy to see Talwar because I had commissioned her as well in the UK. And Captain Dawson, later chief, was the captain of the ship. The Russians didn't think too highly of Talwar because she only had one gun, one turret which they could see, and they said such a big ship and only one gun, whereas their ships used to be packed with weapons and so on and so forth. So anyway, we were escorted out from Riga, initially with an icebreaker, and then out into the North Sea. So April is a month of fogs and poor visibility, and a Soviet-built submarine flying an Indian flag was a matter of considerable curiosity for all the
European navies, that must have been.
Yes. And there are some pretty narrow passages to be negotiated. So we had a port of call, first of all, at Le Havre.
In France.
In France. We were there for 3-4 days. And from there we sailed through the English Channel, I think to Casablanca in Morocco.
That's right.
Somewhere along the way, the coxswain of the boat comes to me saying, "Sir, the chicken that was being cooked has vanished.
At sea.
He was a popular, but a bit of a funny person called Biswas, Master Chief Biswas. I says, Masab, kya keh rahe? What are you saying that the chicken has vanished? He says, yes, come and see for yourself. So I went to the galley, and sure enough, there were just some bones in the pot. And so it turned out that the chickens were so fatty, there was hardly any flesh on them, and it had just melted away. So, conscious of the fact that we had to conform to a certain ration scale, when we reached France, naturally we had to stock up afresh with various things. Anyway, our passage took us to Casablanca, then I think Canary Islands port, I forget the name of the port, and then a long haul all the way to Mauritius.
Right.
And then,
Bombay.
Yeah, too. So somewhere in it was actually a rough time because it's the southern winter.
Right.
When
it was hot. Yeah.
When we
Yeah.
no the
southern winter.
southern winter.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
In the southern ocean.
Right. So
so we were leaving the northern winter and entering the southern winter.
So it was winter all the way
and there
through.
were a lot of very rough seas and so on.
And this was all on surface. The entire passage was on
Well,
surface.
on the surface because we were, firstly, dive would considerably slow down the thing. Secondly, naval headquarters, as a matter of precaution, had said that we are not to dive unless Talwar is present.
Okay.
Now, Talwar being a frigate with fuel requirements frequently,
Would keep going off somewhere
would
else.
sort of come and show her face literally and then dash off to fuel from some RFA or some port or wherever. So basically she was hardly with us, and except in harbour. So anyway, so after Mauritius, we were met by the Indian fleet at, I think, just about north of the equator somewhere, and some messages were exchanged, and then we headed directly towards Vizag. Now, I had a difficult time with the paint work. The submarine was firstly painted grey, shipside grey, battleship grey. That was the pattern for the submarines of the Northern Fleet of the Soviet Union. Secondly, they had done a slipshod job at the last minute, the final coat of paint. So literally, it just came off whenever you... And at least twice during the passage, we had to paint the submarine fully. And finally, before we were to enter Vizag, we made up some speed and anchored off Kakinada for a day, literally, for another paint job.
And you stuck to the grey color, or did you change over to black?
No, we only had the grey color with us. There was no black. So we remained with the grey color. Kalvari entered with that grey color into Vizag, and literally as soon as we entered, I handed over back to Roy Millen. And I was appointed to Naval Headquarters. So whatever happened to Kalvari after that I'm not aware of further. So I went to Naval Headquarters as ADSA, Assistant Director Submarine Arm. It was really only for marking time till I was to be sent for the next submarine, which stretched out a bit, I think for about 7-8 months. And it was a very good experience as a Lieutenant Commander to get an insight into Naval Headquarters functioning. Planning for Veerbhau was being planned, although the foundation stone had been laid the day Kalvari arrived. I think 6th of July, 1968. We were received by Admiral Chatterjee, the Chief of the Naval Staff, who announced that he was delighted to see something that he had proposed 16 years earlier when he was DNP. was finally now showing up as a submarine. So we progressed various cases for the submarine arm, and then then Commander Samant, who was now also at Naval Headquarters,
Yes.
he and I
Both went again.
went for Karanj.
Correct.
The rest of the Karanj crew was already in Vladivostok, undergoing training, and they were all raw hands. So we were the only two actually, in a way, qualified submariners, and I was the executive officer of the detachment, which by now had grown. There were two submarine crews, the Karanj crew and the subsequent Kursara crew,
Right.
but only the sailors, and I think one or two Petya crews. And I forget the month now when it was, but I found generally the morale was a little low,
Okay.
because they had been confined to barracks with not much to do and so on and so forth.
Right.
So I gave them a pep talk about India, progress, this and that. Anyway, some time passed. I'm fast forwarding a bit.
Yes.
And when we were bringing back Karanj, I got a letter from one of the sailors who was there.
Yes.
One leading tell, Yadav, I think his name was. Because he could type, he had typed the letter to say that I was really impressed by the speech that you gave
Okay.
when you came to Vladivostok, namely loud and clear voice. That taught me an important lesson, that unless you speak clearly, you can be heard.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what you say. So I made sure in future that I did that. Anyway, so Karanj, since we were now already fairly experienced, we completed the workups and so on. I think the Soviets had also realized that they could leave things to ourselves,
Yes.
because we were quite professional.
Experienced now, yes.
We did not need to be supervised by them as they had to do with some other countries. And in fact, they were impatient that we were taking so long to complete evolution, the crew is ready, everything, why don't you hurry up and get going? But we said, no, we have to do everything. Anyway, so we did all that. And then we sailed in Karanj, I think toward the end of November.
So again another winter passage, but not severe
Now
winter.
this was the northern winter, which we were leaving and entering the southern summer. So it was a totally different scene at sea.
Right.
The scene was that whereas in the previous passage in Kalvari, all rough seas and stormy weather, now the seas are never completely, as you know, tranquil. But there was such a profusion of marine life.
Okay.
But especially there's a current there, or a Humboldt current, I think it's called, cold current, which brings up all kind of nutrients from the south. So there were seals basking in the sun, and cormorants fish diving for fishing and so on, albatrosses flying around. But an interesting thing happened one evening, somewhere in the central Atlantic. We were on the surface. So now we could choose when we wanted to dive, for basically for evolution purposes, nothing else, or to escape bad weather. So by now the sailors had learned that if it was a very rough weather, they would come and plead with the captain
Let's
to dive. So we saw some smoke on the horizon, and probably made out some one or two ships hanging around there. So we went to investigate, some distance away, maybe about 7-8.
This was where, sir? In which part of the world?
Central Atlantic
Right.
area. I forget exactly where. And found that a ship, a big ship, had called Torrey Canyon,
Right.
was stopped and on fire.
Oh.
And we asked if they could, if they needed any help, and they asked if you have a doctor.
Right.
So they sent a boat, and we sent Lieutenant Madwal,
Okay.
Anand Madwal, to have a look there. He went. There were some injured sailors whom he treated. I think one or two crews were still on board
Right.
until whatever they were trying to do. One or two merchant ships were standing by. And there was nothing further that we could do, so we continued sailing. Next morning, we heard on the radio that the ship had actually sunk.
Oh boy. Okay. So,
And at that time, it was the largest ship ever to sink.
okay.
And not only that, when we came around to the eastern side of the Cape of Good Hope, another huge ship, some 400,000 tons, had just simply snapped into two
Boy. Okay.
on a trough and
Wave,
crest kind of a system. So people don't realize that despite all the advances, there are still a lot of shipping disasters that take place for one reason or the other. So at least we sort of witnessed one of them. Karanj, again, I didn't stay long on board Karanj when we came back in. After a short while, I was transferred in command of Kalvari.
Right.
And Kalvari was, by now, the effects of long ocean passages, consumption of spares,
Diesel hours and all that sort
that
of
had begun to show up.
Yes.
So, Kalvari was not operational at that point, but refitting.
Right.
And I was in command for some months, but we actually never got to see, we never became operational until there was a Karanj now. I had handed over to Lieutenant Commander Talwar, I think, and they were operating on the west coast. And during one of the exercises with the Western Fleet, she had a collision with the INS Ranjit. And both ships suffered considerable damage. I think probably Ranjit was in greater danger of actually sinking because the
must have breached the hull, actually.
Beg pardon?
Must have breached the hull and flooding. Etc.
Possibly, possibly. But I was on the East Coast, so I don't know exactly what took place. There was, of course, a court-martial. Then Commander Samant asked Commodore Grewal, who was Chief of Staff in Vizag,
Right.
to be his defending officer, and asked for me as a friend of
The accused.
accused,
Right.
since I had been his XO previously. So we prepared his defense as best as we could. But a collision is a collision, and the captain has the responsibility. So anyway, that was that. And then, as it happened, I was appointed CO
Of Karanj.
Karanj.
So that leads us to, sir, I think that must have been already close to 1971, sir.
That was in 1970.
70. And already at that time, I think in the early years of 71, the build-up to conflict was already starting at that stage, sir.
Not quite in 70, but it had begun to show itself in the early part of 71.
So could you walk us through that time, sir, as to what did the submarine arm and what did you as a commanding officer do to prepare for the conflict, and thereafter tell us, we can thereafter shift to your patrol, etc., where you got your Veer Chakras.
So I took over Karanj in Bombay. Bombay Dockyard had no expertise in maintenance of submarines. They carried out whatever repairs
They could, yes,
they
sir.
could. And then to complete the rest of the repairs, we had to make a surface passage
To Vizag.
to Vizag.
Right.
We did that, and the Vizag dockyard, which was still just about coming up, they completed the repairs, rebuilt the
Casing
fin and
yes.
so on. And we had to then carry out various trials and the deep dive, etc. So the deep dive was a bit interesting. It was a nice clear day, typical smooth Vizag waters in that particular season. And a Petya was our escort vessel.
Right.
And we went out, and in submarines, to make adjustments, you have to always come up to 100 meters.
Right.
So that the settings on the valves and controls are can function at all depths.
Yes.
So we had to do that a number
Several
of times. And finally, when we surfaced, it was still bright sunshine, but now getting twilight, and there was no escort in sight.
Okay.
So obviously they would have lost us after 6 hours of dive. So they must have pushed off home. So we set course for Vizag, and pretty soon it became dark, and I expected to see Dolphin Light, which on a good day can be located from 50 miles out at sea, but there was no light visible. And so I was puzzled, certainly, that where are we?
I think for our viewers, these are the years, of course, much before satellite navigation, GPS, and all that stuff. So
of course, there was no such thing. Everything was eyeball Mark 1.
Yes.
So there was no light, and knowing the currents as they were, I thought we must have been set in a particular direction which was northeast. So I turned southwest to and still nothing could be picked up. And we went for some hours actually, only by soundings.
Right.
And I made a signal to command that intend to stay out at sea for the night. Nobody asked any questions. Those days we had a lot of latitude. And then my navigator was Bopaya, Lieutenant Bopaya. We said there's something wrong, and we turned around again. And in the morning, we saw unfamiliar light, not flashing, on the coastline.
Right.
And we started taking some fixes and concluded that we were northeast of Vizag,
Right.
nearer to Bimlipattam.
Right.
Some more fixes and so on, and it was established that that's where we were. So pilot suggested that we turn to seaward and head out to the open ocean and then find our way. Some instinct from my earlier reading of naval manuals of navigation, specifically volume 4,
Yes.
told me not to do so, and actually to follow the old rule that if you have traversed some water safely,
Go back
reverse
to Sydney.
course
Yes.
completely, which is what I did. And that proved to be very providential, because had we turned to seaward, there was a bank of rocks about a mile away,
Boy. Okay.
on which we would have been probably to this day. So now what had happened was that these port trust workers had gone on strike.
Right.
And they had not only switched off all the lights along the coast, but also the HFDF
Okay.
station.
So you had no means.
So we had no means of
only the stellar,
nothing.
only stars.
That's it, nothing.
Yes.
Except, which I think was a very, very irresponsible thing for them to do,
Yes.
considering how much they could hazard
Yes.
shipping, etc. But it certainly taught us some lessons. The main lesson also being that the underwater currents are totally different
From the
from
surface.
the
current.
surface currents.
Right.
And so we still had to learn a lot about hydrology and the way the waters behave. I had further experiences,
Yes.
of course, in the 71 war,
Yes.
in this context. Then we were, I think by now, it had become evident that things with Pakistan, in this case East Pakistan,
Yes.
were not shaping well.
Yes.
and we were moved to the west coast, where Kursura, the latest submarine, was already positioned there. So actually, she was the only submarine in a reasonable state.
Right.
Kalvari was not operational. Khanderi was in a very bad shape on the east coast.
Yes.
She had already finished her 100 cycles of battery
Right.
charging, battery cycles, and very high hydrogen and so on. Karanj was in a somewhat better shape, but I say somewhat in a relative way. We had
Yes.
also finished 80 cycles.
Okay.
There was a pretty high hydrogen.
Right.
Worse than that, she had been refitted and repaired, dry docked in the HSL
After the collision.
after the collision.
Right.
In the HSL commercial shipyard, and they had no idea of how to attend to submarine piping systems
Okay.
and so on and so forth. They did what they could. One of the things that went wrong was that the high pressure bottles, 400 kg
Yes.
bottles, they carried out a process called rumbling,
Okay.
in which they introduced linseed oil into the bottle, and by maybe some pellets of whatever
Okay.
metal or something, they sort of scar it out,
Or the corrosion or whatever
whatever
it is.
it is inside.
Yes.
So that resulted, as we were to discover after several surfacing and divings, in some kind of a blockage of the outlet of the HP
Right.
air. And so I found that I would lose 50% of my air every time I surfaced.
Okay.
And so that was a matter of
Right. Concern.
great concern.
Yes.
To lose 50% of your air every
Yes,
time
sir.
you surfaced. And there was nothing we could do about it, unless you sort of removed the whole thing
Right.
again. We didn't even understand that that's what was happening. So, but the thing is this, that we knew the submarine thoroughly well by now, having stood by through the refit
Yeah.
and the deep dives and the so on and so forth. And so, once you understand the limitations of your vessel,
You know how much you can,
then
what
you
risk,
know
what level of
what
risk.
you can trust,
That's right.
what you cannot, and
Yes.
so on. So I was completely confident of whatever its state was, though highly restricted. So we were sailed, as it happened, on the 30th of November,
Right.
1971, with sealed orders to be opened only as ordered.
Right.
And now it was pretty evident that war was going to take place, not so much to us,
Yes.
but certainly to the leadership and the headquarters. So Kursura was already out on patrol, whatever designated area, and so we were to
Relieve her.
relieve her.
Yeah.
And we actually proceeded to on the surface to get to our spot, which was well away from
Yes.
Pakran coast. And Kursura, as I found afterwards, was chose to remain dived and supposedly surprise us by surfacing
Right.
suddenly nearby, and so on. Well, that was okay. We exchanged some news
Yes.
and some stores and things also, and she returned to harbour, and I proceeded to my patrol area.
Yes.
I think that very day, or perhaps a couple of days later, we got orders to open the
Sealed envelope.
sealed envelope
Yeah.
and proceed in accordance with that. That gave various areas that we were to operate in and the mission to be carried out. So the first thing I did was to carry out a deep dive right in the middle of the ocean.
Right.
just to satisfy
Everyone that
myself
yes,
and the crew. So we carried out a deep dive to full diving
Yes.
depth. She was perfect. There was nothing of any concern,
Yeah.
which means that Vizag, despite its lack of expertise,
had done a
had
reasonably
done a
good job.
pretty
Yes.
good job.
Yes.
Uh, and then we proceeded to occupy our
Patrol area.
patrol area. Uh, Initially on the surface to get there quickly,
Yes.
and then evasive movements and diving. Uh, an interesting and puzzling phenomenon occurred a few days into the patrol,
Yeah.
quite close to the coast, where it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. In order to conserve oxygen and minimize CO2
Yes,
emission and all
generation,
that,
yeah.
the crew was told always to be lying down, minimize activities unless necessary,
Right.
and so on. So I was in my bunk, and the officer of the watch called out, submarine rapidly coming up.
Okay.
We were perhaps at about 100 meters or
Right.
little deeper. And by the time I rushed to the control room, it couldn't have been more than a minute or two. She was already on the surface. And so I opened up the hatch and went up. Lovely, clear winter day. Coastline
Visible. Yes.
visible.
Okay. That close. Yes. Sir. That close that you could see the coastline.
Very
Yes.
close.
Yes.
And just a few fishing boats around, and I couldn't go down.
Okay.
The submarine simply would not go down. And in the confusion, I would say, all the main vents were open, all the
Yes.
flap valves were
Checked,
open.
yes.
The Q tank was fully flooded with 30 tons of water.
And you still wouldn't submerge.
She wouldn't go down. And that area has got mud volcanoes.
Okay.
So for a while I wondered if I had closed too much
Okay.
and was sitting on a mud volcano or something. So anyway, I decided to
Move out. Right?
move
Southwards.
alter northeast
Okay.
along the parallel to
Right.
the coast at full speed on the surface. And after about half an hour or an hour, I was able to dive again.
Okay.
I couldn't understand the phenomenon until after the war, when we came back and I was in Cochin, and there was a fisheries exhibition in Ernakulam. So I went across to look at the exhibition, and there they had a chart depicting how in the winter months there is an upwelling of water.
Right.
In the cold water comes up probably all the way from the Antarctic or somewhere, and
Hits a shelving
Hits-
coastline and comes up.
hits the Makran coast is a peculiar coast.
Yes.
There's a very sharp drop
Yeah.
after a shallow continental
Right.
shelf. So that's what brings up the nutrients and the fishing, which is why there is a constant battle between our fishermen and
Yes.
the
Pakistanis,
Pakistani fishermen, because the nutrients bring up the fish there. So that upwelling phenomenon, that means water of a much higher, colder, higher density, was pushing us up, and it required it to be either to rebalance your trim, or in this
Right.
case, get out of that water. So that was the phenomenon.
So, in terms of your orders which you had with you, did you find it constraining that you could not bring the submarine to bear with its full combat capability, or was there were there opportunities to find targets and you felt constrained on the requirement for positive identification and things like that? So, were these?
Well, first of all, the targets were very few. And they were mostly merchant targets. And mostly they were targets going away
Okay.
from
The Pakistan
the
ports.
Pakistan coast.
Yes.
One or two, I even read their names.
Okay.
They were so readily accessible. But there was no justification to
Absolutely, yes.
consider any
Yes, sir.
attack. I think one day we identified a nuclear submarine
Okay.
because after tracking, the acoustics were extremely good. Winter time in that region is anomalous propagation. So not only you get long ranges electronics, but also there are layers and things of channels which you get sound at long distances. So we tracked it, and then because of a single screw configuration, I was not sure whether it might be a merchant vessel. So we came up to periscope depth, and there was nothing at all inside, flat. The sea was fairly calm throughout this whole period. And the moon was also, unfortunately, I would say, high. So it was not ideal conditions for submarine operations. Anyway, so we used to try and get surface sights from the dive condition, but once or twice from the surface condition, and to ditch some gash also. So on one occasion, I remember we were fairly close to a prominent cape there, and carried out usual pre-surfacing checks, and nothing could be heard. There was a low haze, so nothing could be seen also through the periscope. It was just about, sun had set, so it was just that twilight period which one was looking for. And I surfaced. And as soon as I surfaced and took a quick look around, I found two ships, white-hulled, small, maybe a distance of about a couple of miles. They had not been heard at all. They had not been seen through the periscope. And when I saw them in that fading light, they looked very much like these coastal passenger ships that we used to have on our west coast. They were called, one was called Sabarmati. There were a number of them. They used to run between Bombay and Bengaluru and Mangalore and Cochin. They were very convenient actually for people. I don't know why they discontinued. I think because of high taxes on fuel. They couldn't sustain it. So, and they were pointing westward. So I took them to be passenger ships. And in any case, my battery was completely down that day. And my hydrogen was high, and I needed to recharge, etc. So we withdrew from there and carried out battery charging, etc. Some years passed, and I found myself on a kind of a track 2, where a former Pakistani naval chief who was commanding a destroyer at that time on the Makran coast, he was also part of that group. So we were talking about it, and he told me that those days our minesweepers used to be painted white. So if I had had more experience and circumstances had been different, I would have suspected that they were minesweepers rather than passenger ships. And perhaps come back looking for them next morning or whatever it was. But anyway, that was, so I think I would say that was the only warship target opportunity
that there was.
Otherwise, it was all merchant.
Because I think the Pakistan Navy, sir, after the Op Trident, they withdrew and they all went into harbor. So,
there is an island there, which I was, of course, receiving reports. Our main news used to come from the radio. And the limited broadcast specifically directed towards us, which was very, very short. And so whenever we used to pick that up. And I, of course, didn't make any signals as per orders, except I think 1 or 2 check reports. So I monitored our own attack going in on the 4th of December and again on the 8th of December, which I had been informed about, and I could pick up the chatter and the transmissions and so on. So we were close enough for that purpose. But I also learned that apart from those Pakistani units which had withdrawn completely into harbour,
Yes.
the cruiser Babar had gone behind an island.
Okay.
There's a bay called Sonmiani Bay.
That's right. Yes,
So this is what I got
Yes.
from news reports. I don't know what the factual thing was.
So we've covered a lot of ground, sir. We'll just come to the final phase now. So let's fast forward, sir, that you've been through all this, and let's fast forward to the time now that you're at the apex level, sir, and you've, as the Chief of Naval Staff, sir. Can you tell us a little bit about those days, the challenges you faced, and your priorities at that time as a Navy Chief, sir?
It was a difficult time for the Navy. I'm not referring to the media publicities and all that had preceded and succeeded also. I'm referring to the budgetary situation. So there was a lot of governmental instability. During my tenure, there were 3 prime ministers. There were votes of confidence and defeats of governments and so on taking place. In a way, you might say the government was in a state of paralysis.
Right.
The budgetary situation was bad. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was the period when we had to send some 30 tons of gold
To,
to Switzerland
to get
to stabilize our. So you can
Yes, sir.
imagine that. So in other words, there was no money
Yes.
coming to the service. Even what had been budgeted for and approved, we were not allowed to begin building those ships.
Right.
I remember at that time, there were 3 prime ministers during my time. At that particular time, Mr. Narasimha Rao was the prime minister. And he came to commission the 4th of the SSKs,
Yes.
HGW submarines. And I spoke to him, especially about the Mazgon docks building line shutting down, the skilled workers drifting away, and how difficult it was to train them up to reach the stage that we have reached, and that we must continue with the thing. So he said, I would like your permission to
Continue with the
be
line.
able to announce
Okay.
while you are commissioning this ship that we will be building successors and so on and so forth. He said, yes, you do that. So in my simpleton approach, I made an exhortation in my own speech to the workers from Mazdocs who were sitting there.
Right.
I said, now please get up from here, go immediately to your yard and start off and so on. I hardly realized that neither did the government have any intention at all of following on that program, but it was a pure, I don't even know how to put it. I was just fooling myself.
Right.
That's how it was. That the reality was that they had no money
Yes.
and no intention and no ability to be able to get on with it. Since the ships were in a bad state and they were consuming our dockyard effort and whatever limited budget I had, if for nothing else, for reasons of safety
Yes.
and to safeguard the future Navy, I decided to start scrapping ships
Okay.
that were not viable anymore,
Right.
starting with Vikrant.
Okay.
Now, my predecessors had hesitated to
Go down that path. Yes.
do, yeah, quite right. Partly for reasons of that at least it's there in the Jains
Right.
fighting ships, and
Yes, sir.
people see it.
It's a fleet and being in a
But
sense. yeah,
actually, Vikrant had reached a stage when literally you had to be careful when you stepped on deck that you didn't go through.
Right.
There was hardly any watertight integrity left. And to take a step back, before that, when I was CNC East, there were petias tied up in the dockyard there, and I walked around one of them, and the ducting, ventilation ducting was trunking,
Yes.
was lying on the deck, and there was no metal in it.
It's totally corroded. Yes.
It was only the canvas
Around
lagging
it. That was holding it together.
up.
Yes.
So I told the ASD, luckily we were colleagues earlier in the nuclear submarine project, Admiral Narayan Rao.
Yes.
So we had a good, comfortable and open relationship. I said, Narayan, ship is never going to sea again. Don't waste your effort. Carry out a board of what is it called?
For decommissioning. For decommissioning the vessel, sir. That is.
Yeah, for appoint a board
Yes, sir.
to assess the condition and so on.
Yeah.
And so I started decommissioning ships. It may not have exactly happened in
Right.
my time, but Vikrant, Deepak, Petyas,
Right.
but still I could not get orders from when I retired, one of my farewell speeches, I was able to say with great pain and complete honesty that not a single new ship has been ordered in 10 years.
Boy. Okay.
In 10 years.
Right.
You cannot build and run a navy like that.
Yes.
I'm very glad to see that things today are totally different.
Quite different. Yes. So you're doing more than 10 ships this year, I think, sir. That is, yes.
So, so I would say that my 3 years was mostly a holding action as far as fleet strength was concerned.
Right.
But on the other hand, there was a lot of work to be done in housekeeping.
Right.
Our documentation had gone to the dogs, partly because we had stopped getting the manuals and BRs from the Royal Navy. And whatever they would give us, they would charge by the page at an exorbitant price.
Right.
So I directed the schools to
make
start writing
Yes.
all the documentation and so on. I suppose it must have been. There were a number of construction projects, hospitals, accommodation and so on, in which there was quite poor design in many cases. I'm sorry, that still continues to plague us in numerous respects. So I had a number of interactions with the engineer-in-chief branch in order to rectify those things. So some happened, some still haven't happened, but
work in progress.
that's how it is.
So, sir, I thought we could end with any closing words you have for today's young officer. As a former chief, it's a different Navy today in many ways, much better resourced, much better equipped. Would you like to advise them about their careers, etc., or something that you'd like to tell them, sir?
Well, I don't know if I have any worthwhile advice to offer anybody, but I think one thing that never loses its relevance is reading, and along with it, writing. So whenever I speak to young officers, I find they're all highly competent, well switched on as far as technology and gadgetry is concerned. I'm not sure how well acquainted they are with some of the more abstract aspects of leadership and how the mind functions and how to deal with the crisis situations. So I advise them, if I can call it that, from what has benefited me, which is reading of all kinds of classics and on various subjects and so on. And I'd suggest to them also that they should keep a diary. in our days, and I'm sure it's still there, but in a different form, because I know it had already deteriorated, the Midshipman's Journal
Was a
was
log, yes, a
a
personal log.
practice
Yes, sir.
which was taken from a navy which had 200 or 300 years of
Experience.
global experience. It counts for something. And so it taught you to firstly think,
And then document also.
first observe, then think, and then to record it.
Yes.
And I had a habit of keeping a diary. Sadly, I didn't always maintain it, but I have still some of them. One I like to recall from time to time is my Annapurna 3 expedition, in which I made notes every day as we went along. And it seems to me that I wasn't there.
Okay.
In other words, your diary puts you back in touch with yourself,
Self.
if nothing else.
Right.
And so those descriptions which first occurred to you, which you have put down of the villages, of the villagers, of the terrain, of
Yes.
the weather and the climate and your own feelings. And if time permits, I'd like to share one experience
Sure, sir.
in the
Sure.
mountains with you.
Sure, sir.
So, I grew up in the army. From Peshawar to Dhaka, I went to school in Dhaka. As children, we picked up Pashto and studied Bengali, and my father was in the Marathas, so I picked up Marathi as well. So, one or two of the postings were in the mountains,
Right.
Darjeeling, Shillong, and I developed a deep interest in the mountains. So as soon as I could, I went I got myself a basic mountaineering course.
Right.
And Tenzing was our field director,
Okay.
and one or two other famous
Yes.
Sherpas who were the instructors. And one day, as part of the culminating thing, we were to climb a small peak, some 20,000 or 21,000 feet high. And we set off at about 4 in the morning. It was, of course, freezing cold at that. We were about 15,000, 16,000 to move up.
Right.
Climbed much of the day. It was thick fog throughout. Nothing could be seen. And everybody was cold and miserable. And finally, we reached the so-called peak. And we were sitting there, and I was thinking to myself that, you're a sailor, what the hell are you doing here? And then suddenly, in a morose frame of mind, and suddenly the mist cleared, and I was looking down, literally about 10 feet away from me, was a sheer drop,
Boy.
maybe 4,000 or 5,000 feet down into a bleak valley, all black with whatever the soil, some rocks, snow, and a real picture of desolation.
Right.
And obviously, it would seem no human foot would have ever set,
On that place,
on
yes.
that, been there. And in that morose frame of mind, I thought to myself that how, in compared to the scale of nature
Yes, sir.
and the endless cycle of seasons,
How inconsequential.
how insignificant
Yes, sir.
I as an individual was.
Yes.
Now, I brought these morose thoughts back with me, but that was actually a revelation to me. And in a way, it sort of removed a sense of ego that I might have possessed. And after that, I could, whatever situation came, I could deal with it in a
Modest-
detached
yes, sir.
way. Detached
Yes,
way,
sir.
that there's something much larger,
At play, yes,
and
sir.
that all you have to do is do your duty,
Yes.
and it doesn't matter what else is to follow.
So it remains for me, sir, to thank you for this truly fascinating conversation, and also thank you for being so candid all the way through, sir. I'm sure our viewers are really going to enjoy listening to this. And just wanted to thank you once again for taking the time out and coming and having
Thank
this
you. I hope the viewers do enjoy it. I know when I look at it, I'll be horrified.
I'm sure you would, sir. Thank you so much once
Thank
again.
you,
Sir.
Monty.